In this video, I'd like to give you a quick walkthrough through our next laboratory exercise that covers the idea of keeping header files and implementation files separate. So it's possible to write a C++ class that will basically contain both definition and implementation of functions. But it's a better practice to keep header files only with declarations of constructors and declarations of functions using semicolons, and use a separate implementation file to define these constructors. And notice that all names that appear over here are prefixed by the scope operator and the name of the class. So likewise, function f right here is qualified by the scope resolution operator that its full name is the function that belongs to class name myClass right here. So the motivation of this arrangement is driven by three important principles. The header file can be included in multiple C++ source files, so therefore you want to keep this implementation in one place and not in too many places in your project. Also, the second motivation is that the class declaration in the header file has a clean interface. It's much easier to read the header file and not be distracted by hundreds of lines of code in the definition of these functions. And also, there's another sort of benefit, is that the member function definitions in the C++ file are compiled into a single object file as opposed to be scattered around other object files. So they're just like pretty important highlights of these things. So in this lab, the prototype for this lab could be lab 3A, and this is where we just use the Windows close function. So so you can start downloading the zip file, or you can use an existing project on your system if you already completed this lab 3A. And then of course you rename your folder as lab 4 in this case, and so you can start making these changes in the project. So you can find a location of demo window. For example, in my case, this is the directory where my laboratory exercises exist, and this is the lab with empty window right here. So I just make a copy of this project. Let me just check whether it's clean. Yes, it is. So we can make a copy of lab 3 right here, paste it, and then of course we just need to rename it like this. Okay, and now we have a new folder, and we can open this folder as the project here, new file, open project solution, and I'll just copy and paste location of lab 4 and open the solution. Of course, then we can say view solution explorer and finish renaming this to be lab 4 in these places. So we can also rename the main file. Under the source files, we can rename this. So this is the starting point for this exercise. So then what do we need to do manually in the directory of our project right here? We need to go down to the source, and the first modification here is to rename this from demo window to make it a main window, which is probably a better name. Just rename it right here, C main window, right? Main window like this. We rename it, then I drag and drop right here, and just remember that you want to change this to main window to be consistent, and I would get rid of the leading underscore, and we just need to make sure that we change. I normally double click, copy, and update these macros to match the name of the file, and this also should be main window. So this is one change right here. So, and now what we would like to do is that we'd like to move declarations, actually definitions of these functions right here out of main window.h, because we want to, and by the way, this is where else we are going to rename it. I guess there are copy and paste solutions to this, but I'll show you how to do this manually. So we have this main window, so now this will be main window. And these two implementations, I'll just copy, and we'll add a brand new implementation file, main window.cpp. Okay, so we'll just add new implementation file, new source file, main window.cpp. This will be the name of it. So we're going to back to View, Solution Explorer, and source files. We're going to right click and say add new item, brand new file, cpp file, and just name it main window.cpp. Remember to add source to the path, because that's where we want to keep this file. Just remember that all of the source files should be kept under a subdirectory within the project. So anyway, we click add. So this is an empty file, and this is where we would like to move this definitions of these functions and place them right here, copy and paste. Let's resize it side by side like this. And what we want to use fully qualified names right here with the scope resolution operator of these functions. And so these are pretty much all we need, modifications to this file, except that we want to I press Shift Tab to arrange the white space, and of course we need to include this header file on top of the implementation file. Just like this, they're sitting in the same directory. And so these are the definitions. The only thing is that the static keyword was used with functions long before C++ existed. So right here, the static keyword needs to be removed, or you can enclose it in multi-line comments like this, reminding you that this is a static function right here. So this is done with this modification. Of course, we also have our main function. Again, back to the solution and opening lab 4. So demo window now gone. Now we call it main window. So I think that should be pretty much it. Maybe this comment also needs to be updated right here. But this is how you can do it manually. Otherwise, you can just copy and paste from here. That should match what I do right here. Right, let's save everything and build. Cannot open this file, of course, because it's now called main window. We changed that. Build again. Okay, we're still saying here that already has a body. Oh, of course, well, because I did my thing manually, now these should collapse only to declarations, right? So this will be declaration of the show, and this will be declaration of, like this, just a semicolon at the end of function window, callback window closing. Okay, so yeah, so this was the purpose, the idea to keep the implementation away from the header file. Alright, so let's try this again. So this builds fine. You can also go to Fluid and change lab 3A to whatever you want. This is lab 4. Okay, so also discussion how to add IOStream to Fluid. I think we already done it in our laboratory 3B, so you know how to do this. So this is pretty much the overview of this laboratory exercise, laboratory 4. Okay, just we just created a copy of lab 3A, which manages empty window, and here you have a clean separation of the declaration of the class that handles our window and its implementation. So this is the main function that also took change right here and right here. So these are all together. I will try to display them all in one single view for your snapshot, very quick snapshot. Here, of course, I just removed definitions of functions and kept only semicolons, and this is what we ended up having in our implementation file. And now if you look at the source of our lab 4, you can see that now we have these two files compared to what we had, just a single header file in our previous lab, or lab 3A. So now there's a separation of declarations and implementation.